So they just didn't want to even be associated with it anymore, you know. Dispossessed, if you want to call it that, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, Philip Nolan, The Man Without a Country, where he says, I hope that I shall never hear or see the name United States again. And the government gave him his wish. You know, he was put on a ship, and for the rest of his life, all he could do is sail around all the seas and the waters and everything, and he was never allowed to touch land again, you know. And they call him the man without a country because he was never able to set foot on soil again until his death. And then they allowed him, when they knew he was dying, they allowed him to set foot on soil, and then to, of course, be buried on soil, I believe. As far as I know, you know, you got to remember, you learn the stories in grade school, and they leave so much out. He might have been buried at sea, but towards the end of his life, he was able to, you know, set foot on soil again. That was because that was his dying wish or something. Well, the old ones, in the same way, you know, they said, I hope that I'll never be associated with the Ara race again, and they got their wish. You know, they're not associated with the Ara race. They are called the ancient ones or the old ones because they are no longer part of the Ara race. So anyway, to me, that's the Ara Aga Bandar, not only capsulized, but put in a form that most people can understand, and also explain where it's not contradictory. Because the contradiction that I always found was, like, people will tell me, or I would even tell myself and say, well, wait a minute, you know, if the Ara came down here to colonize this planet and to create mankind and everything, then how come you know, they turned out to be the evil ones, you know, the ancient ones, the old ones? So that explains that part. Plus, also, it also explains how the Ara created man too, because the elders, the hierarchy, the rulers of the Ara were still in the heavens. So even though they weren't directly involved down here in this little tiny little, you know, minute planet, they still oversaw everything. So when man was created, they actually were a part of that and actually, you know, oversaw that and everything and completely controlled it, even though the ancient ones didn't even know they had any control, because you had to remember, when the ancient ones lost in the big great war in heaven, they lost everything. You know, they lost their right to create and do everything. So man was created by the Ara race, but the influence, there it is, the influence was still coming from the old ones or the ancient ones, i.e. what also that your Bible says man was created in sin. So see, everything is explained. There's nothing contradictory about it, you know? And that's not only why I wanted to capsulize it into this lesson, 3 pages, but also, like I said, this is my falling process. I jumped off the cliff because I know I'm going to be caught, and now I'm just falling down towards the arms of the Creator. You know, I've always felt that humanity has given me limited vocabulary. So, excuse me, when I try to express myself, it's really hard because of the vocabulary that I'm left with. And sometimes, I believe I mentioned this in one of the original tapes too, but sometimes, you know, when I try to explain something, I'm limited by the vocabulary that I can use. Not because I'm limited by that vocabulary, but that, you know, I'm limited by how I can express it to you with that vocabulary, because it's hard to tell you, well, you know, this is from the Arabic translation, or this is from the Hebrew translation, or this is from the Phoenician translation, or this is from the Babylonian translation, because I've actually, in my seeking of the knowledge and in my looking into these ancient scriptures and stuff, I've actually learned these translations, you know, how to translate from the Phoenician, and how to translate from the Arabic, and how to translate from the Babylonian, and how to translate from the Chaldean and stuff. But there's no way that I can convey that to you. You know, that, well, this is what it says in Chaldean, and this is how it translates, that type of thing. So I'm limited in my vocabulary, you know, and it's, I was just thinking about it, just now, I mean, just as I was finishing the last part of this tape, I was thinking about how all this occurred, you know, and I have a real good friend, and his name is Jim, same as me, and basically we've known each other for a long time. In fact, we both went through the San Francisco earthquake together, and that was kind of our bonding, because we both not only went through it, but we survived it. And we both are musicians, and we both play the guitar. And he's a lot better at the guitar than I am. Not necessarily he plays a lot better, but his technical skills and his knowledge of it is a lot more than me. And all long time, I used to jam with people, and they would never be able to get past the thing that I wasn't traditionally trained. In other words, I never learned chords and all that kind of stuff. So when I was jamming with them, even though it sounded good, even though I could listen and hear what they were doing and compliment and stuff, when they actually saw how I was achieving these different sounds on the guitar, it wasn't a traditional way that they had learned, or that something like this, So they kind of like closed their minds, and they just decided that that I wasn't a musician, or I couldn't play the guitar, so they didn't want to jam with me. And even though nobody could jam with me because of my unorthodox way, I could jam with everybody. I mean, I could listen to what they were playing, and I could pick out notes and stuff to compliment it, But they never recognized this either. And then Jim, he recognized this. He recognized that even though I had not learned the traditional way that everybody learns how to play guitar, I still was really good at playing the guitar, and I still was very talented, and I still had a lot of ability in playing the guitar. And he's the first one that ever came along that recognized this, and he would help me so much. He would do things like, where I'm playing it up here with these 3 fingers, well, you can play the same thing down here with 2 fingers, because he noticed that I was limited in my finger dexterity because of, the injuries that I had suffered from both of these 2 fingers when I was a young man, that actually limited their, manipulability and their flexibility and stuff like that. So he would just, rather than lose his patience like everybody else who I jammed with, up to then, he'd say, well, how you play it down here? He said, well, I'm playing the same thing up here like this. And he showed me, how to transpose onto from the keyboard to the fretboard and stuff. Talking a lot about guitar. And he opened up this whole world for me, because after he put it in the simplistic terms that I could understand what he was saying, that even though I played the guitar completely different than probably everybody else in the world played the guitar, because I did a lot of stuff with 1 and 2 fingers that everybody else does with 3 and 4 fingers, right? Only I just do it on different location in the key on the fretboard. Well, when he finally was able to explain this to me in simple terms that I could understand, it's like I could play anything then. I mean, the whole world opened up for me. I could play classical, I could play rock, I could play country western, I could play jazz, I could play folk. I could play anything, because he just said, see, how you do it this way, well, this is how everybody else does it. So basically all you're doing is you're just transposing. You're doing exactly the same thing they're doing, only they're making it harder on themselves because they take 3 or 4 fingers to do it, when you can do it with 1 or 2 fingers, because you're doing it on a different part of the fretboard. And when he actually explained this to me in simplistic terms where I could understand, and not only that, it took the patience, to teach me all this stuff and everything, and a whole world of guitar playing opened up to me, because I realized that, hey, I was a good player, and I could play anything, and I could do anything, and I could write songs, and I could, play along with my music and everything, I just had learned a different, non-traditional way. It's like when Willie Nelson talked about the Django Reinhardt, who lost 3 fingers in a fire, and still went on to be a great guitar virtuoso. And Willie Nelson said, I wish I could play as good as the Django Reinhardt, but I've got too many fingers,